Welcome to Journals of Self-Discovery. Hello everyone, thanks for joining me. I just wanted to let you know that next month, November 17th through the 19th, the TAT Foundation is having its November gathering. The title of that is The Treasure Within Our Lives, Unconnected to Experience. I'll just read a quick blurb from the page. It says, Richard Rose wrote, "Beyond the mind is a golden find." In a poem beginning, "I come to you as a man selling air." Self-realization, finding our true identity, the golden find beyond the mind, is the underlying focus of all the TAT Foundation gatherings and of the sessions for our November 2017 weekend. I highly recommend, if you can, go to this. It'll be a good one. November 17th through the 19th. You can find out more at tatfoundation.org, and you'll see a banner right on that front page, and that'll lead you to more information. This month on Journals of Spiritual Discovery, my guest is Norio Kushi. I heard great reviews after his appearance at the August TAT Foundation meeting, and I was really looking forward to interviewing him. It didn't disappoint. Enjoy. Well, to get started, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. I know we've got a time difference, which complicated things a little bit, but we're here now and looking forward to speaking with you.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate the call and the opportunity to speak with you as well. So, yeah.
Great. So I want to just get a little sense of your background and your upbringing, and I realize that some people are not particularly interested in talking about that, but if you are, I think that might help some people who aren't as familiar with you. But I was looking around on the internet some, and it's my understanding that your father was and your mother both were greatly involved in the macrobiotic food movement. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, they're considered the ones who popularized macrobiotics here in the United States. Although they weren't the only ones, but they definitely are the most well known. And my mother, what I tell my to the what I like to tell people is that my mother opened the first natural food store in the United States in April 1966 on Newbury Street in Boston. And
Wow.
she's the first person to use the word organic in selling produce and products, commodities, etc. So,
Wow, that's amazing. Now, do you feel that, well, let me ask you this. What do you feel is maybe the one of the greatest lessons or most valuable things that you learned from your parents?
the number one thing that I feel influenced uh, the eventual recognition of what I now like to share with people is that when I was 5 years old, my mother told me we were out having a picnic in Flushing Meadows, New York. I was 5 years old. She was breastfeeding her fourth child at that point, and she told me to always trust my feelings. And she
Mm-hmm.
said that feelings are what will guide me through my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I took that to heart, and I actually understood what she was talking about because that's the way she lived. She demonstrated that uh, as the way she lived, and that's how she even ended up in New York City. So that's been. I feel like that's typically we're all taught to trust our intellect
Sure.
or use our intellect. I don't know if trust is the right
Mm-hmm.
word, but to use our intellect as our guide And it turns out what I've uh, discovered in 2005 that is actually a poor way of navigating our life. That it, not that the intellect isn't useful for sure, that it's a necessary part of being human. But as far as the guiding uh, light, so to speak, or whatever, it's our feeling body, which is a much more reliable guide than our intellect.
Hmm.
So that's that I would say is probably the number one thing that lesson I learned from my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I mean, all along the way, you know, both my parents as well as numerous friends and teachers, etc., have of course had influence on 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 all areas of my life for sure.
Sure. Do you feel like, as a teenager, let's say, uh, were you able to keep that advice in mind, or were you a typical impetuous, I know everything kind of teenager, like myself, for example?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I definitely went through that, but at the same time, I did trust my feelings, and feelings are different than emotions, and so as a child growing up, um, because because I found it to be a reliable guide, I continue to use that through my years. So one of the things, for example, that occurred when I was 15 is I went into walked to high school one morning, and as I walked in through the front doors, I suddenly stopped and just watched, and I was observing the faculty scurrying around, getting ready for the day. All the other students were arriving to school, and all of a sudden I got this feeling like there's something wrong with this. It's not. There's something wrong with this whole thing, and
Hmm.
so I didn't know what it was. I just knew that I was finished with school, and so I turned around and I walked home, and I told my mother that I was finished with school, that I wouldn't be going back, and she said, "Okay, fine." And she never asked me a single question about it because she knew that I was going with my feelings.
Wow.
So, and I've never regretted a moment of that decision. I don't even know if I can even call it a decision. It's just I just felt, that it was not. There's something inherently not right about that. So whole scene. So I've never looked back, and I'm grateful for that because I now know what I did pick up on um, back then,
Mm-hmm.
which is which is our conditioning and programming, etc. That this was an aspect of it which focuses our attention in the thinking, and is based on maintaining a self identity which is actually not real. So so
Mm-hmm.
I mean we can get more into that later on, but that's what I appreciate being able to share with others is that everything that we think we are has been programmed into us, and is a, a thinking created self identity, and we are much more than our thoughts. I mean, we are this human being, and thinking is one of the things that we can do, like
Mm-hmm.
twiddling our thumbs, for example, or whatever. It's like, but it's not, and so the thinking is not primary to our being, and our
Mm-hmm.
self identity is only a thought. That's where, and once we accept that primary identity as, I mean that, excuse me, this thought-based self as who we are, then our attention becomes focused in this world of thinking, and we completely lose touch with our true being, our true nature, which is infinite.
Mm-hmm. You said that feeling is different than emotion. Um, that's something that if you had said that to me when I was a teenager, I would have had no idea what you were talking about. And to this day, I have difficulty articulating what that difference is. Can you shed some more light on that?
Yep, sure. The growing up, I knew what my mother meant, but I never told anyone about it. I never had to explain it. It was just something I did. I just went with personally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only later, once once there was a recognition how the self is created, that this is, only then did I see the distinction between emotions and feelings, although intuitively, or I knew that there was a difference. In other words, I didn't, when I say trust my feelings, I never trusted emotions as a guide. I always trusted feelings. So there was this underlying knowing of what the distinction was, though I never had examined it growing up.
Right.
So, and now what I see is that that if that our core being is infinite, and that the energy of the infinite, so to speak, flows from our core being through different. I use the onion as an analogy, the different layers of our being, and moves through our feeling layer and then into our thinking conceptual layer, and uh, and so when we can tune into that, the energy that originates in the infinite, the way we tune into that is when the body is open, is relaxed and open, and then the feeling is felt in. I mean, it just feels like it's flowing through every cell of the body before it moves into the intellect conceptual layer, and that energy, which was interpreted as a feeling, is then translated into images and thoughts, ideas, concepts, and and contrast that to emotions, which are also felt in the body, because the body
Mm-hmm.
is a sensory organism, is a sensory organ. The emotions um, originate more in as a as the energy moves up into the thinking layer and then moves out into society and returns back through the thought layer and then into the body. If as long as when the body is relaxed and open, then that energy will flow, return back through the different layers into the return to the infinite. But what tends to happen because of our separate self identity is that this thinking energy then starts, instead of uh, moving back into this to the core, moves in a circular, starts moving in a circular pattern, uh, which is then that circular pattern is then felt in the body um, as restrictions, um, like uh, so there are constrictions in and it's not felt like depending on the emotion, it's felt in different parts of the body. and the restriction is felt in different parts of the body. So, so the distinction between the emotions and feelings is one is that it's felt, it's the feeling that my mother was referring to is felt when the body is relaxed and open, and it's felt in the entire body, and emotions are felt more as a restriction in different
Mm-hmm.
in isolated parts of the body.
Mm-hmm. And you think that I, for example, if I wanted to experiment around with that by observing some of my reactions throughout the day, if if I felt some bubbling up and it was constriction in my chest, for example, that's a clue that would you say that's caused by thought or caused by thought that's been in a circular pattern? Is that how you would explain it?
Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily caused by thought, but yeah, it's generally when what I suggest is to observe what is the thought about, and is it because there are different patterns. What of thinking appears in different patterns. I was able to see that once um, when I was looking at through the question of what does it mean to be human. Eventually, I got to the point where I was able to see the different patterns of thinking, um, and so 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 the, what one can observe is what are the thoughts about which are associated with this restriction. Say in the chest, it would be a grief feeling of grief or sorrow. Say for example, or if there's anger or anxiety, what are the thoughts associated with that? Uh, and where is that? And then um, we can definitely pick up tune into the restrictive feelings in our body.
And well, if I wanted to try to be more open and relaxed, do you have any recommendations for people, or is that something that we just have to kind of stumble upon for ourselves?
Um, yeah, it's that's the the because as a most small child where we've been conditioned or programmed is the word I like to use, like a computer. We've been programmed to identify with this a concept called me as who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Then this let's see, excuse me, where was I going with this? um, re I'm sorry, Sean.
Sure.
Repeat the question again.
I was curious if, for example, I wanted to try to be more open and relaxed. Is there anything that you could recommend, or is it just by chance?
Um, um, yeah, definitely. Because I was introduced to, my mother had mentioned this to me. I was aware of this. So what would occur is if I was in a like if I was lost somewhere, like in New York City, um,
Mm-hmm.
as a child, I would then try to figure out where I am. How did I get here? What, etc. And there's a certain point that when that as I mentioned earlier, the thinking, the intellect is a necessary and important part of our being human, but it has its limitations. And as a child, when it hit its limitations, when the thinking hit its limitation, the thinking would end.
Yeah.
And then there would be a natural opening, like an alertness or an openness. And then the feelings would, I could tune into the feelings. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not something that we're we're generally that that sensitivity to the feelings is generally programmed out of us, so to speak. And we all inherently have that. It's a natural part of our being, but we've become desensitized to that. So so what I always recommend or suggest is to, as things are arising, just observe. Just observe yourself and whatever is arising from a third person perspective, as though you're watching a play on a stage, and you are removed from from the action on this stage. You're sitting in the audience, and observe from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and in watching from that perspective, there's like a space that's created. You know, there's the observer watching what is going on, as opposed to being caught up in the midst of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's one of the things is to take that perspective as things are arising, and the other thing is to notice the judging, notice any kind of in these automatic ways that we are that 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 we're programmed to just automatically think, such as judging, comparing, etc. Just observe it and don't attempt to stop it or interfere with it or change it. Just observe it in that same way, third person perspective. Um, and also the other thing that I recognize, and maybe this may be useful and helpful for others to look at, is that at one point I recognized that nothing is personal, that things are occurring around us and things are occurring to me as an individual, etc. But the actions are not personal. They may be directed towards me as an individual, but the but it's not has it's like the watching a play. The actors are interchangeable. You know, you could have
Mm-hmm.
an understudy watching, performing you. You know, if say you're sick, you have an understudy or someone that's playing your character, for example. So in that way, it's not personal and specific to you. So these are the kinds of things that I coach people in in using in looking at their specific situation as they're arising. So and
And would you say, in regards to that last point of it's not personal, that, for example, I could remind myself of that throughout the day and sort of intellectually keep that in mind, but that's a little different from how do I phrase it? It's different from a gut level realization, I think, that, oh, nothing is personal, and really getting that versus, Norio said that nothing's personal, and I really shouldn't take this personal that my boss just said such and such. Do you see what I'm getting at?
yeah, I understand. And for sure, when there was a recognition for me that nothing's personal. It was, I mean, it was a full body feeling recognition, uh, and it completely shifted the way that I looked at the world, so to speak.
And before that shift, were you aware of the idea that probably nothing is personal? Is that something that you were ex- trying to be aware, or remind yourself of that, or did that just come out of the blue?
It just came out of the blue, just through observation, through
Mm-hmm.
watching, uh, and and watching from this third person perspective, the interactions as they were happening, the different things that were occurring. It just
Yeah.
one day, I mean, it's just, as a matter of fact, I remember where I was. I was in Jamestown, New Mexico, at a truck stop when it all of a sudden hit me. Oh, nothing's personal.
Mm-hmm.
So it was it was like a dramatic, a memorable. I don't know if dramatic is the right word, but it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like I got this thing that I just saw. Oh my God, nothing. And before I had spent my life taking everything personally.
Yeah.
Prior to that,
Yeah.
like, yeah, why me, or I'm
Right.
bad luck, or etc. It was always about me.
Well, I wanted to touch back upon those earlier years a little bit. We briefly mentioned your teenage years and the remarkable fact in my mind that you turned around and walked out of school and never went back. I mean, a lot of people will spend their entire 20s in school, working on advanced degrees and so forth. I mean, what was your life like during that period? What were you up to?
Well, I well, I enjoyed it a lot. I didn't do any.
Mm-hmm.
Moved out and lived in Seattle, Washington for a little while. Um, when I was 17, I went and lived in Japan for a year and a half uh, before returning to the East Coast. And then when I was 19, I was back in New England. And from there, I mean, I've always had this passion for wheels, so I got a job driving a taxi. I was involved in that for a number of years, and then uh, at 25, I got a truck driving license and started driving
Mm-hmm.
trucks and buses, and so um, so here and there, I would also help my parents. My parents, with their work, and they would reel me in. Oh, we need your help. We need your help, and then,
Right.
and then I would escape back to the what I enjoyed, the wheels. So
Right.
and I did a lot of bicycling. I enjoyed bicycling. I did little amateur racing, and I've gone all over the country uh, in Canada by bicycle. So
Mm-hmm.
that's part of my wheels uh, enjoyment of wheels, and I
Mm-hmm.
loved the bicycling because it's I mean, ever since I was a teenager, I did a lot of miles. I was 14 when I did my first overnight bicycle trip, and from Boston to Montreal and back. That was 600 miles. And what I enjoy about the bicycling is that it's I consider it a full immersion experience. In other words, it's not just traveling, which I enjoyed. It's not just wheels that I enjoyed, but it's like, because I would feel the hills, I would feel the
Mm.
heat, I would feel the cold. If it was raining, I would feel the rain. It was like a full body feeling immersion experience, and that was something that I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. So your living life and having different jobs and experiences, and you have this thread of trust your feelings, which sounds like it was kind of a bedrock thing for you. Were you also, I mean, were you interested in philosophy, or I don't know if there even were non-dual teachings readily available, but those sorts of things? Were you reading books or going to lectures now and then?
Well, I enjoyed reading for sure.
Hmm.
I I disliked reading intensely when I was in school, but as soon as I stopped, I turned around and I left school. I started enjoying reading because I started reading what I wanted to read as opposed to
Right.
assignments. So, and the first things I got into were science fiction books, for example, um,
Mhm.
and but the I was always interested in uh, I guess the word is existentialism.
Mm-hmm.
My place in the universe, or what is it that we're here for, or et
Right.
cetera. Questions like that. I was never interested in spirituality, religion, meditation, anything like that. Um, though it was something that was always around me. Uh, the people who were I, growing up, I lived with hundreds of people, thousands of people from all around the world would stay with us
Hmm.
continually, at different parts, times, and so and those people would be interested, to say, in meditation, TM, whatever. It's like when I was 10 years old, for example, there's a TM center not far from where we lived, for example, and there would be people who would come and visit and come to our house for dinner who would also maybe might be involved with TM or things like that.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I knew about that world, but I was never interested in going into that myself. Whereas existentialism was something that I was interested in. So like in 1980, I did the S training. I did
Oh yeah.
more those kinds of things were what I was interested in, as opposed to uh, spirituality.
Hmm.
Uh,
Uh, did there come a point in time? I believe I in another interview I heard you mention the year 2004. It sounded like perhaps that was a pivotal year for you. Did something change in your life around that period of time?
yeah, the the what I consider um, at the end of 2002, um, I recognized that my life was not going to turn out, and that when I share that with people, um, it sounds to the listener, it sounds like it's a negative thing. It's a
Right.
negative, but for me it was absolutely positive. Or I shouldn't even say absolutely positive, but to me, the way in which I recognized that was in the same way that I got the feeling. So as the feeling moved through the body, what I was doing, I was questioning, I was looking at. I had lost my job and needed to get another job. I was facing, financial relationship challenges, etc. So I'm standing in the kitchen in my house. I'm looking, and as I'm standing in the kitchen, I had come back from an interview, a job interview, and I'm looking at, well, what else? I had sent out resumes, and
Yep.
all of this is swimming around in my mind and and I look out the window, and as I look out the window at the trees, there's that moment where the mind it's just for a split second, and the mind stops, and this, and the body is fully open, and there's that feeling. there's a feeling
Mm-hmm.
which then comes through the body, and and I got, oh, and that feeling was translated into my life is not going to turn out. And with that recognition, it's like that gut feeling is like when we were talking about the recognition that nothing's personal, for example. It's like
Yeah.
it's a transformative feeling. That recognition, if I felt like 40 pounds of weight was lifted off my shoulders. So it was not at all negative. And 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 also in that moment, I knew exactly what to do next. And that and since that time, I haven't had to ever make a decision, so to speak. I mean, I make decisions like, well, what am I going to eat? I go into a restaurant, look through a menu or something like that. But like
Yeah.
decisions such as, oh, what am I going to do next as far as a job or as what, etc. Um, I just see that in every moment as life is unfolding, the next step is always clear ever since that point. Uh, and So I saw clearly, oh, okay, I'm going to go back to driving a truck. It's something that I enjoy wheels. It's something that I can do to support the family, etc. Pay the mortgage, etc. So unbeknownst to me at the time is that the programming, what we learn, what I recognize is that the recognition that life is not going to turn out was the ending of living for a future. And unbeknownst to us, we're programmed to live for a future. And this future that we're living for is actually a fiction. It's not real. Because the future is an idea, images of something that we are perceiving as a future, but it's all based on all ideas and images can are only based on what we already know.
Mm-hmm.
So, so unbeknownst to us, we're continually projecting the way we're programmed. We're continually projecting what is known, which is the past, onto what we're in our mind is perceiving as a future. And so this way of thinking, this way of showing up and meeting the world, meeting the life as it's showing up, um, we actually we actually can't see what is really truly happening in front of us. So, because we're continually projecting this idea of a
Mm-hmm.
future onto what's showing up, and uh, and so this way of being, this way that we've been programmed, I call this uh, a, a linear time-based reality is what we find ourselves in, and what I eventually saw, this I didn't see it at at that point in 2002, but in 2005, I finally saw that all reality is actually a creation, and that we've been programmed into living in this linear time-based reality. So and the necessary what keeps us anchored in this linear time-based reality. What I discovered in 2005 was this separate self-identity, which is also not which isn't just an idea. It's not real.
Yeah. So that was a chunk of programming that fell off in that moment in the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. In
Mm-hmm.
that moment of living for a future, the constant, continual living for a future, ideal future ended. So that and then returning to driving a truck, once that program, because that way of looking at what's unfolding in front of us, looking at it from a future base, what's in it, what's is this going to get me to this future, whatever. Um, because that ended, I began to see things which I could never see before, just with no, without looking. I just saw things that I could never see before, because I had always been looking from this future-based idea, and so so then the question arose. Um, well, I was specifically looking at problems that I had these personal problems, and uh, and then it all of a sudden dawned on me. Oh well, wait a minute. I'm not the only one with problems. Here I am driving the truck, and I said everybody's got problems, whether they be relationship problems, money problems, health problems, et cetera, et cetera. We, is I was looking and I saw my life as a series of problems.
Mm.
So, and I
Right.
see, and as obvious as it is, it all of a sudden dawned on me. Wait a minute, everyone's life is a series of problems. So, so then the question arose: what does it mean to be human? Maybe we're supposed to have problems. Maybe there's nothing wrong with having problems. And here, I've been looking at problems as something wrong. It's always based on something wrong. I said, well, maybe this is the way we're supposed to be as humans. So that's that. So in 2004, that's when I started asking that question. 2004 was what does it mean to be human? And I did that. I did that deliberately and and with no intent in mind. I only did it as like a hobby, like a curiosity,
Mhm.
like a child playing in a sandbox, and uh, and not to try to fix anything or anything like that. And so I just watched from then on. I began watching my life through that question, and in so doing, I, all these things just started showing up, which which was um, just things that w became so obvious to me, but I had been completely ignorant of before.
And one example of that is that that everyone has problems. Is that an example of the types of things that were showing up?
Yeah, that was the one insight that triggered the question of the
Mhm.
curiosity of wondering what if this, well, of what does it mean to be human? The Another thing that I saw once I began asking that question is that I saw that that's when I was able to see that emotions and are stored in the body, and as I would have memories of something that I thought was the cause of sorrow or grief, as that memory would show up, uh, I saw that the feeling of grief was actually stored in the body, and it came and met the memory. So I saw that they were independent of each other.
Mhm.
They were that somehow the mind had linked them together, but they were independent.
That's fascinating.
And so I was able to see things like that, see that, and
Mhm.
so therefore the association to those memories fell away. So so the memory, for example, of uh, that showed up was splitting up with my wife, and uh, and and as that memory showed up, this sorrow showed up, and I watched, and I could see that the sorrow was rising up from my body and meeting that memory,
Mm.
and so as that fell away, and when I saw that, I recognized that, oh, that event, that memory is not the cause of the sorrow, as I had believed that it was. And so the so that memory no longer, in seeing that so clearly, I saw that 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 memory no longer evoked sorrow. and that memory fell away. And then because I was still feeling the sorrow, there was a prior memory associated with sorrow that showed up immediately. And then I saw that with that memory as well. So as I'm driving east across I-80 through Nevada, all my memories related to sorrow from the latest memory all the way as I'm driving east started falling away one after the other until by the time I got to Salt Lake City, all memories back to my childhood of sorrow were no longer there, were no longer associated with sorrow. And I could look at just pure sorrow for what it is without a story, without a cause. And I could see that sorrow, that there's only one sorrow, and that the sorrow that Sean experiences, or the sorrow that anyone experiences is just human sorrow, and it's not individual sorrow. And there is only that one sorrow, the human sorrow. And I saw that there was nothing whatsoever that I could do about it. And so there was this release of energy where I didn't realize that I had unconsciously or consciously had spent my life attempting to manage or run away from sorrow. So all that energy I had placed on 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 that fellow just ended. And here again, it was similar to that what I described with this weight being lifted off my shoulder when I saw my life was not going to turn out. All this efforting that I had unconsciously been that had been driving me to trying to manage and avoid sorrow ended as well. And with each of these realizations, it was like just feeling lighter and giving up control, so to speak, because I had been trying to control this. And so these are the kinds of things which I mean that was a major thing that I saw there. Um, and and with each insight like that, I gave up more and more control of my life, so to speak. Uh, and so one of the insights I had was that time is also created in the mind, and that's um, when I was picking up a load in Pennsylvania and had to deliver in California. As I um, as I'm getting ready to leave on the trip, I'm sitting there and imagined arriving in California, and all of a sudden I saw, oh, wait a minute. The beginning of the journey and the end of the journey is a single movement. And prior to this, I had always um, looked at my trip as 1 mile after the next mile, and that there's this me that's driving this truck and gotta pay attention, avoid this, you know, get watch where I'm going, et cetera, et cetera. I saw it as one step after the next step there, after continue, um, efforting, uh, and so, but I saw that it was just a single movement, and that it was the mind that was breaking this single movement into separate events. And when I saw that life is the same thing, that our birth and death is and life is just one single movement. So I pictured the image that I got was like an arrow being shot from a bow, and birth is when the arrow left the bow, and and death was when the arrow hit the target. And I saw that regardless of what our life looked like, regardless of the trajectory of the arrow, that we that that we always hit the target. We always hit the bullseye. and and so and what happens though between the time the arrow leaves the bow and hits the target is there's all this chatter. I should do this, I shouldn't do that, or I should have been doing this, or et cetera, et cetera. It's like this constant uh, um, um, monologue going on. What a soliloquy or whatever the correct term is. We're constantly judging,
Yeah.
evaluating, and comparing. Am I doing this right, or this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
So, so, so this was another major uh, recognition or insight. Once, and it was this insight that then I automatically started watching life from the third person perspective. Uh, um, because because at that point I saw, oh, nothing's ever in my way. There's nothing, it's it, there's nothing to struggle for because it's all the effort and struggle that I had had thought my life was about. I realized it was just made up. So so with that I sat back. I could sit back and watch life as though I was watching a play. And there I was on stage with everything else that was unfolding, and I was just sitting back and observing. And that and looking at life in from that perspective, from the audience perspective, is as we uh, mentioned earlier, is when I saw after I had started doing that for a few days that I saw that, oh, nothing's personal. Uh,
Mhm.
on that same trip as I got to I stopped in Jamestown, New Mexico to get fuel for the truck, and then it all of a sudden hit me. Oh, wait a minute, nothing's personal. So uh, so so um, so these are the fascinating things um, that that I was able to see, which I could never saw before, and
Yeah.
and and I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't looking to see any of this. I hadn't read about any of this. There was nothing, it's like this is just something I was observing and I saw. So,
And was this observing this question that of, well, what does it mean to be human? That sounds like it was kind of the core question, perhaps driving this. Was that when you're driving in your truck and you were? It doesn't sound like you were intensely asking yourself, "Wow, what does it mean to be human?" Oh, geez, I don't know. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Was was there were there questions, or it sounds like memories were coming up of things? Were you approaching this as looking for the feeling behind the memories, or I'm trying to get if you had any, like, I guess, what was the feeling of your inquiry, or what was the,
yeah, that's
I
I
don't
don't.
know how to,
Yeah. I
yeah,
don't.
I
I
yeah,
think
think
you
you
know
know
what
what
I'm
I'm
getting
getting
at.
at.
yes, yeah, this is one of the most challenging things to share with people is that I had no agenda in the inquiry.
Okay.
I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't trying to fix anything. Uh, I, it was just what I realize now is that the the recognition that life was not going to turn out somehow returned the mind to more of the way we uh, more like a childlike mind, playing in a sandbox. Um, and and I see now that this is really the natural way of living, which is then conditioned out of us or programmed out of us from living in this way. And so and so yeah, so there was so so this is the hardest thing I feel that for people to really see is that I was absolutely not looking for anything. These things I just was able to see.
But you did have a curiosity, yeah?
Oh yeah, 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 exactly. And curiosity is natural. Is in
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
it's I would say yeah, I would say that it was a childlike curiosity.
But you didn't have but you didn't feel a need or a desire to find something.
No, not at all. And and the I mean the curiosity was really alive. You know, it's like everything that I saw was like, oh, what is this? Wow, this is something. This is fascinating. I never saw this before.
Mhm.
It was like that. Wow. And 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 in seeing these things like the taking things personally, etc., like just it just fell away effortlessly. I wasn't doing it to try to fix anything. I just saw, oh, I just saw that that's what was up.
Mhm.
So what about at least in my circles, the many people who are on a spiritual path and are looking for something and have a feeling of great need for something to happen because they are, the range of reasons is almost endless. Maybe they're afraid of death. Maybe they are psychologically in misery. It can go on and on and on. The reasons. What about people who have a really intense desire to get into a different state of being or a different state of mind? Uh, what sort of advice or suggestions do you have for those people?
Um, yeah, myself, because I never stepped into the arena of spirituality, I had never considered myself a seeker. But what I realize now is that I was a seeker, but I was interested in material uh, uh, gain. I was living, that was my seeking, was wealth or uh, status,
Mm.
etc. So
Mhm.
uh, much more, I guess, what would be considered a selfish, greedy uh, place, so to speak. So
Well, but the spiritual search could be seen as the same thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So what I now and once I began sharing the recognition, the cosmic joke, of that we always have everything we could ever want. There's never anything missing. It never was and never will be. Once I began sharing that, then I was introduced to the spiritual world, and then I recognized right away. Oh, seeking. That's what I was doing too. I was also a
Mhm.
seeker, though I was not looking for any uh, relief from suffering. So, for example, I mean, as a matter of, I didn't even know I was suffering. I thought, until it ended,
Mhm.
and I didn't know that I had that there was an underlying fear in my existence until it ended. Then I saw, oh, there was this underlying fear in my existence. So, you know, so
Mhm.
it was so, and these things just ended, just when I saw, just in seeing what was so, uh, not not trying to get away from it, or trying to get rid of it. So, um, so, so what I share with people is all the things that we've been looking at and discussing about recognizing that we're living for a future. That's what seeking is. That's seeking something, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Um, that and that just to recognize that and see that we are that's the way we've been programmed. We had no choice, but when we were born as babies, that's not the way we were being. But then as we're still this small child, we're programmed into that way of thinking in the same way you and I have been programmed into speaking English. You and I didn't create English. It's something that's existed for
Right.
many, many thousands of years. Well, the way we use English and the way we think is in the language that we learn. That way of thinking is also not just the language itself being English, but the way in which we use the language is what's creating our reality. And the way we're using it is from this perspective of a linear time-based way.
Mhm.
So, and living for a future, etc. So these are the ways we just adopt without question. And and in in that adopting that way of thinking, we adopt this separate self-identity, which is just another way, just another thought, another idea. So through no choice of our own, we had no choice but to adopt this separate self-identity.
Mhm.
So so any attempt, any movement of thought, any movement, any attempt to do something about it through our intellect only furthers the prison that we find ourselves in, because because it is the thinking itself and the language and the talking to oneself, which is creating the prisons, and that this way of thinking, uh, there's no way out with this way of thinking. It only
Mhm.
strengthens our our reality of something missing. So um, so therefore, what occurred for me is that I gave up living that way, living for that future, and then so with no effort, I what I was I began able to see things that I could not see before, just because of that, and 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 it was like felt like I was this little kid. I was curious. Oh, what's this? Well, what's it's like, wow, I never saw that before. And so,
Right, but you didn't give it up, right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
didn't say, "Oh, I'm tired of that. I'm giving that up."
right. No, no, I didn't say that at all. I just saw it wasn't real. So, oh, okay. So,
Mhm.
and and in that same way of observing my life unfolding as though I was watching a play, after doing that for many weeks, I discovered without looking for it, one morning I woke up and there I could see my thoughts in the same way. I could watch my
Mhm.
thoughts as though they're on out there, on like the clouds in the sky. I could watch the
Mhm.
thoughts, and and that's how I was able to see the different patterns of thinking.
Yeah.
And and once I could see the different patterns of thinking, then all of a sudden it struck me that, oh, that there's a space between each thought. And I was never able to see that before. There are times in my life, like we spoke earlier, where thinking would end for maybe a split second, or when I was 18 in Japan one time, it ended for 20 minutes or whatever. But it was not something that it just occurred. It wasn't something that I observed. Some, but this particular time, I was able to observe the thoughts and the patterns of thinking and observe that each thought began and ended in silence. And well, then there are the circular thoughts which run in, but the thoughts which um, and and in that recognition, I saw the silence, and then so
mm,
then with being a once the mind can see the silence, it's it just without any effort. There's just this resting in the mind resting in silence. It just occurs, and so for many days, once I saw that, there just long periods of silence um, for 2 weeks, and uh, and and in the silence, once in a while, as I'm driving the truck, I would say, "Oh, okay, I need to get fuel." There'd be, okay, I'll get off exit 140, and there's a truck stop there, get fuel, and then that thought passes and recedes into silence, and there's the silence again,
mhm,
for many minutes or whatever, and then so so it was, and this all occurred here again. I wasn't looking for any of this,
right.
and of course, once the thinking ends, then there's just this sense of bliss, and there's no longer a feeling of separation from anything, anyone. You just feel totally one with the cosmos, with every, and just just this ending of any kind of separation, because all of that is just ideas and thoughts, the separations, and the all and uh, um, so so I was in this place of just having just in this place of bliss for while driving the truck in this silence, and just amazing. And the first time I stopped at a truck stop in the silence and walked into the truck stop, I sat down and ordered a cup of tea, and I looked at the people next to me, sitting there enjoying their dinners. I looked at the people working there. I could look at the people in the store, and I just started laughing to myself because I saw that they too were already in this place of bliss. They
Mm,
just they just didn't know it because all our attention is always on our chatter,
yeah.
and it's only the chatter that is saying that there are problems, that there's something wrong, that there's something missing, etc. And none of it is factual. None of it's true. So here I am luxuriating in this space of silence. And so after the fourth day, that's when I got what I call guy got hit with the cosmic two by four. And what I mean by that is that as I was driving and I was approaching my exit to get off uh, to go to where I needed to pick up a load, um, I started seeing, after having been in this place for 4 days of bliss, I started seeing that everything was alive, was energy, was nothing was truly solid, and and I could see that the rocks were actually energy, and so I began to perceive this, and it was fascinating uh, in watching this. And then I arrived where I had to pick up, and as I approached the gate of the warehouse, the driveway of the warehouse where it's picking up, all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, I don't exist. And I saw I saw that everything I thought I am, it was only a thought,
Mhm.
and thinking had ended, and therefore this me that which I identified with being ideas and concepts in thinking was no longer there and hadn't been for 4 days. And so that's when and being hit over the cosmic head with the cosmic 2x4, I got the cosmic
Mhm.
joke. The cosmic joke is that that everything that we're looking for, that the seeker is seeking. For me, it was $15 million in the bank, a modest home, number of cars, bunch of different wheels, nice bicycles, et cetera, nice healthy family, and live happily ever after. That was my so
Right.
so so I saw that the seeker is only an idea, and it's only an idea that something's missing. It's only an idea that something's wrong. It's only an idea that there's a problem. So so the cosmic joke is that we have everything that ultimately everything we're looking for is this place of wholeness and completeness, being at home in the world, in the universe, in the body, just just being totally at home and in harmony and peace with our environment. And I saw that, oh my God, this is how it always is, and the only thing that kept me from seeing this is this person looking for it. So
Yeah.
that's the cosmic joke, is that the person looking for it is the only thing that prevents the recognition that we already have it. Being hit over the head with the cosmic 2x4, it was like, oh my God. Once I saw that, then this personal curiosity, this personal project I had been engaged in, uh, was now something, oh, I've got to share this with my friends and family. This now became uh, my new project, which
Mhm.
I'm still engaged in today, and
Mhm.
still looking at, and I'm always looking at different ways of being able to share this. Uh, so yeah, I appreciate the interview because it's another opportunity uh, to share the insights that I've gotten, and and basically what I want people to see is that it's all um, about relaxing and just seeing things for what they are. It's not about looking for what's missing. It's about just seeing what is there already.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the coaching or the what I share with people is all regardless of what's going on for them. There's always a kind of a I attempt to gently, in a gentle way, just keep returning the focus onto let's see what's really here. Let's see what's here. Is that what's so because that's fundamentally all I did for the whole time, and then and all of these things were revealed, not because not because any uh, um, practice or anything, so to speak. It's just a matter of I had stopped looking to get better. I had stopped looking for future gain. I had stopped looking for, that living for a future had ended. And it's like, okay, whoa, where am I? What am I? What is this? What is this? What's happening? It's like, so it's so. yeah, so uh, that's where I always point to for point at is what is it that's really real and not real. In other words, what 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 I recognize now is that 90% of what we think is real is not real because
Right.
it's based on looking overlaying our idea of the future onto what's showing up.
Oh yeah.
So so it's and the which means because we're the way we think we're thinking from a linear time-based reality, and uh, and the clues to that is less like fear, um, anxiety. These are symptoms of living in this future time-based reality. Uh, and of course, that's also the symptom of identifying with this mind-created separate self. And the separate self, it turns out, that identity cannot exist unless we buy into this linear time-based reality. The two of them, it it comes together,
Mhm.
and and once we're caught in this prison, this linear time-based reality, then there's the underlying fear um, that follows us throughout life, and the quote suffering and all that. So it's like I mentioned, I didn't even know I was suffering until it ended. So and I didn't try to end it because I didn't know I was. So it was all just a matter of everything just all that just fell away effortlessly in being able to see what's really happening, so to speak.
Uh, one statement that I heard you make in another interview that I wanted to dig into just a little bit was you said there's a gate beyond the silence. Can you tell a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. What occurred is that once I saw that the self was not real, that it was all in just thinking. It's just it's a thought created idea, concept in thinking. Um, Here again, it was like so obvious that that it just fell away, that there's no such thing as this separate, this self, this me. It's not real at all. I just saw that. So it just fell away. And once it's seen, then it was like, then how the hell was I fooled? Was the thought that came. How can I be fooled into believing such a thing?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
yet I had for my entire life never even questioned that this me isn't who I am. And that's why and that's what I call the human dilemma. Is like we go through life. Um, the human dilemma is that we don't know what we are, and we don't know that we don't know. So here I was caught up in this human dilemma. I never questioned it, and now, but seeing it so obvious, it's the immediate question that showed up was, how is it that I could have been fooled because into ever believing such a thing when it's so obvious that it's not, that self is not real. So, translated to humanity, I recognize that this is the dilemma for all of us. It's not just wasn't just a Norio dilemma. So
Mhm.
so the question is, how is it that we as humans can be ever fooled into this, into ever believing this? and never questioning it. And uh, so that then triggered the that question as it moved into the silence. It triggered um, the opening, uh, moving past what what I can refer to, I guess, as a gateless gate. Um, so the analogy I like to use is that the the way that we're conditioned, the way we're programmed, we find ourselves in this reality. Okay, and this turns out this reality is um, all created in our thoughts and through language, uh, and and so what occurred when I saw that life was not going to turn out is that I started exploring beyond this reality. And as I started moving beyond this reality, I I came upon these walls and I saw, oh, okay, I'm in a room. I didn't even realize I was in a room. Okay, but here I am because I had never explored beyond what I knew, which was the totality of everything I knew, the thoughts and ideas.
Mhm.
So as I started exploring beyond that, I came upon the walls and discovered, oh, I'm in this room. And as I explored the walls and the the edges of the room, I came upon a window, and I could look out into this. So not only was I in a room, I was in a house. Okay, and I could look out the window into a beautiful garden. And in seeing the beautiful garden, then I through this window I found a doorway next to the garden, next to the window, which opened up into the garden, and I walked into the garden. Okay, so and walking into the garden is uh, is when the thinking stopped. That is what the garden is the world of silence when the thinking ended.
Mm.
And so I went out into the garden and I lived in this garden and just enjoyed this garden for 3 days, just having a great time, just really uh, just being in this blissful place while I'm driving my truck. And 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 this garden is large, and so I could explore this huge garden, and I could see, and in the middle of the garden is the house, and in many rooms in the house, and I was in one of those rooms in that house.
Mhm.
So and so so here I am outside enjoying the garden, and then on the fourth day, I found that there was in the same way I found that there was a wall. I found a fence around the garden. So the garden too had its limits.
Mm.
And so I start following the fence, and and it's and then and I found the gate. There was a gateway out beyond the garden. And this gateway, that is the recognition that there is no self.
Mm.
And so and then the question, and then the question that arose, how is it that I could have been fooled, or that any of us can be fooled into ever believing that this self is what we are, was the step was that question propelled me through this gate, took me through this gate beyond this garden, and 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 what I saw was the key to moving into the gate was the collapsing of the separate self identity. The experiencer and experience becomes one. There's no and the doer. There um, there's no one that's experiencing in actuality. I mean, there's no separate experiencer that's having an experience. Though we've been led to believe that, but that's actually not true. So that distinction collapses in moving through that gate. So even in the silence of the garden, there's still the distinction of a separate me
Mm-hmm.
that's enjoying the garden, so to speak. So so that so so that's so that's the so the recognition of the no self, that there is no self, and collapses uh, the the identity, the idea that there's an experiencer that's having an experience, and that moves us through this gate, so to speak. So, and this is all metaphorically speaking, but as the movement is made through this gate, and the attention awareness was flowed into this space, turning around. As I turned around, I saw, oh, not that. I mean, I can only describe it with words, but it's beyond the words. Is I saw the that garden, the gate, the house, the room. None of that was there. None of it's real. That's all created. And so then I just followed. Just um, I mean, there wasn't an eye that was following. It's just that there was just this movement into the what I now describe as the inner core of the onion, moving into the uh, for days, just being able to, just as I slept and rested, just being able to rest, move into this place, and every night just explore, move further and deeper till finally there was resting in the infinite, so to speak. And then there's the moving back. Then effortlessly there was already, I knew that I just had to relax and just I I saw everything. I saw that it was possible to move the attention along any lines. The infinite breaks up into infinite patterns, and I could follow any line and be in anywhere and anything in space, in space time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and and but at the same, so I saw that everything is an expression of this infinite. And I knew that all I had to do was just relax and to find myself back into this planet Earth, etc. This current reality, so to speak. So that's the metaphor I use for uh, this the
Nice.
gateless gate, so to speak.
Yeah, thank you for talking through that. I appreciate that.
I mean, the crazy thing is none of this was I looking for any of this.
Right.
And and the and of course, I was excited. I wanted to share that we all have everything. There's nothing missing. And I gave my first talk just a matter of uh, within 2 weeks of all this, and uh,
Mhm.
and the first talk I gave, the only I I I I had forgotten. It was so obvious to me that the self isn't real. I had forgotten that it's not so obvious. I had forgotten that I had been fooled my entire life. So I just, so the first talk I gave, I just said, "Oh, we've got everything we could ever want. There's never anything missing." Yeah, the only thing that prevents us from seeing that is everything we think we are, you know, and thank you very much. That was all I had to say. That's all I had. And I'm looking at blank faces, and it's like,
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah.
and then I remember and looking at that, I realized, oh, that's right. I didn't see it for all these years either.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so that's the first time I had the thought, oh, I wonder if there's anything written about this. And I,
Mhm.
I wonder if and then I thought, well, yeah, there must be something written. I can't be the only one that's seen this. So,
Mhm.
so that's when, I went to my truck driving. I stopped and visited one friend in Virginia, and told him and his wife about this, and asked, have you heard this about this before? Do you know anything? Are there anything written about this? Do you know? And they gave me a book that they had called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Mhm.
and, and then another close friend, I visited him a few days afterwards, and who also lives in Virginia. And he gave me a book by Krishnamurti, and I asked him the same question. And then another friend in Nevada, she gave me a DVD by Adyashanti, and then I started going into bookstores, browsing, and
Mhm.
went into the spirituality, New Age spirituality, religious section of the bookstore, and I'd never been in there before. I was never interested in that, so I started looking at all those books because,
It's a big section of the bookstore.
yeah, and because I was interested in finding if other people, what are they saying about it? How are they sharing about this?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that because I saw there was no self, I saw that all the stories are made up to support the self, the existence of the self. And I saw that, I saw my life was just so that I saw my life was just like a bad opera. You know, that everything I thought
Yeah.
it was just this bad opera. And so I
Oh
thought
yeah. I
I,
understand.
I thought of the Phantom of the Opera, and
Mhm.
so I started calling the self the Phantom Self from the Phantom of the
Mhm.
Opera. And but then upon reading these books, I saw, oh, the value of stories. I saw, oh, okay, stories do have a place. There is value. And so I then spent many weeks trying to recreate a story. Like I tried to figure, because I saw that this is how it always is that we always have everything we could ever want. There's never anything missing. I saw that there's no cause and effect. Also, that time is created in the mind. So thus there's no story. That story doesn't matter, so to speak. So I had to then look at, okay, well, when did I see this? Okay, and what happened before that? Okay, let's see. I was doing this at the time. I saw this. Oh, okay. So little by little, it took me a number of weeks to recreate a story,
Mhm.
because I had all stories had fell away. And so the story that I've told you, parts of, and the book that Steve Earle and I are writing. Steve Earle is doing the writing. He's, um, but it is this story, and so 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 yeah, so anyway, it's so I saw so upon reading these books, I saw the value of story, and so I started recreating story, and and I continue to enjoy and appreciate listening to other people, whatever their insights are. The other thing that is key is I saw that hierarchy, the idea of have not, higher, lower, etc., is only in thinking.
Mhm.
So I saw that. So when I immediately wanted to share this, um, it didn't. I saw that there's no such thing as gurus or and disciples or students or teachers, whatever, in this arena.
Mhm.
And so so and I and so the thing that I always want to stress with as I share this is that I'm not a teacher. I'm not I'm not someone who knows something you don't know. This is something that
Mhm.
this is something that I want uh, you and anyone to look at for themselves, not to believe anything I say. Just look for yourself and see what what you see. And the metaphor that I use to describe this is that just picture like you and I as friends, and we're just walking through the forest. We just say, hey, let's take a walk. We're just walking through the forest, and we find a rock, a shiny rock, and I pick up this shiny rock. I say, hey, take a look at this. Look at the color. It's beautiful. Hand it to you, and you look at it and say, oh yeah. And we describe what we see, and the way you describe it might be different than the way I describe whatever. But there's no right or wrong description to the rock. It's a rock. Just something we're looking at, right?
Mhm.
And you see things that I might not see, vice versa, whatever. So 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 this is the way in which um, the place that I encourage people to come from, to be in looking at all this with me as we're in conversation in that same way. So um,
Are you open to people contacting you for um, to have a conversation?
yeah, I am. Yeah.
And if they wanted to do that, would the website be the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, let's see. By email would be the best thing. And the best
Okay.
e
Okay.
the best email is actually organic wheels with an S at the end, one word, organic wheels at gmail.com. I do have a website, but it's was put together by a former girlfriend, and so it's lay dormant since she and I broke up. So
Ah, you got to get her back, Norio. Get the website running.
it's so yeah, so yeah, it's outdated, but it's I mean any if people contact me through that, I will get the email. It's demystify en- enlightenment.org is the website.
Okay, great. Great.
Demyst it's demystify enlightenment, one word, .org. And the Buddha at the gas pump, I like to steer people to that.
Yeah, I watched that interview. That's a good one.
And and definitely with some notice, I do drive around the country, so with some notice, I'm available to uh, spend some time, like I did at the TAT weekend in August. Uh,
Right.
I
Yeah.
yeah, so um, I'm always open to that, uh, and look forward to events like that.
Good. Good to hear. Yeah, hopefully we'll get a few more contacts for you out of this interview.
Okay. Yeah, and I do once in a while do get to the Bay Area. You live in San Francisco, is it?
Yes, across the bay in the East Bay.
Okay. Yeah, I have a son who lives in Oakland and a brother who lives
Oh,
in,
okay. Yeah, I'm just north of Oakland.
okay, like Berkeley or
Yeah, yep.
uh-huh. Yeah, and I'm working on a book with my friend Steve Earle, who's the actual author. And
Right. Is there a publication date for that?
no, not yet. Uh, our ideal is to find a publisher like Sounds True, who might
Mm-hmm.
who would publish it, but we haven't gone. We're just putting together a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
So and so once that's complete, for sure, I'd love to uh, get a copy into your hands.
Oh, I appreciate that. Most definitely. And I will, yeah, we'll keep in touch. And when it's ready, I can let my contact list know about it and spread the word.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Um,
Thank you, Norio. I really appreciate your time.
and likewise.